Hello, everybody, and welcome to OpenExO Live. It's really great to be with you. For me, it's this evening. For Aaron, who is with us, it's this morning. And as you can see on the screen, there's some awesome people coming up in the next 7 weeks, which is really, really exciting. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Aaron up. He's a strategist, an entrepreneur, and he authored a book called Reimagining Innovation. We'll speak a little bit about that as well. And he's held a number of roles in sort of strategy and innovation and marketing and sales. And so really excited to speak to Aaron this evening. Aaron, how are you doing?
Very good, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfect. So we always start by asking people to give us a bit of background about what you've done in life. Now I know you've done quite a few things, so I guess the summarized version.
Yeah, so started my career at Anderson Consulting at the time. Actually changed to Accenture, so did management consulting. Went to strategy college and had some experiences with some very, very large companies. And then after in 2001. I transitioned to be an entrepreneur, and since then ended up building several different businesses and selling. I'm actually have exited 12 companies and failed at more than that, though. So have been very active in the entrepreneurial space. And part of that was I had a digital strategy firm that we were able to kind of incubate and accelerate ideas. And we built these little digital businesses and would roll them out and sell them.
Yeah.
And in 2015, I sold that agency. We had some really good clients. We had Google, and it was probably our biggest technology client, but we also worked with Coca-Cola and some others. Sold that agency 2015. And then since then, I've been facilitating innovation and really this movement towards exponential, which is why I've been involved with OpenExO really since the beginning, and actually was a grad at Singularity University. So I've spent a good amount of time in the exponential innovation world and helping global 100 companies like Daimler and Coca-Cola really lead into their future. And really, so as they now are seeing they're getting disrupted in different areas. Back in 2015, we were just predicting that this would all happen.
Yes.
But now we've, so I would actually take a group of executives from Daimler into different places around the world, like Shanghai, Singapore, Tel Aviv, Shenzhen, London, and we'd study those entrepreneurial ecosystems and learn what could they take back into their strategic plan and what was the disruption that they actually saw in their industry as well as other industries that they could apply to their business. So in a nutshell, that's been my career. I've also been a professor in entrepreneurship and innovation for over 10 years. So kind of give you an idea of a little bit of everything I've done.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. That sort of variety is pretty cool. It speaks to me, at least. I can say that much. And so, like you said, I mean, you were a grad at SU, and that's how you got involved in the OpenExO community. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I went to Singularity University. Went through their executive program. I actually was one of the executive producers of the movie The University, which was about Singularity. And so I spent a lot of time there. I actually ended up being entrepreneur in residence at Singularity. So I spent, had an apartment on campus and spent a lot of time there with 30 plus companies that were going through the program. Obviously got to know Salim a little bit there, and have been back there quite a few times. And then literally was in the first OpenExO kind of training program in Madrid, and have been involved since then. So
yeah, awesome. That's really great. And so how would you say that, like, all this variety you've had has sort of affected your view of innovation, right? So there's all the work you did with your agency, then there's the exponential stuff. Like, how has that affected the way you see innovation?
Well, it goes, I mean, I know we're going to talk about the book a little bit in a little bit, but it really leads to this idea of speed. It really matters that you execute quickly on your purpose And, going in and out of different size companies, the one difference where companies are lean, iterative, and agile, they're able to actually move to where the market is versus be left behind. And that's what we're really seeing with some of these larger companies that aren't able to make the decisions that they need to make, that they're slowly being disrupted by other industries, not even their own industry.
Yeah.
So it's no longer your competition. It's literally an alternative that is disrupting from afar. So the ability to synthesize that on a systems thinking level is really what I work to capture in the book that I wrote, about how innovation has been reimagined because it's exponential, but it needs to be conscious, really around conscious capitalism and thinking about all the different stakeholders, because we see that the world is in a period of really, looking at anything that's going wrong is going to be identified. There's a lot of transparency. So companies have to do the right thing, and they have to do it early, and they have to really build those programs around, where their stakeholders and their customers will be in the future, not where they are now, which has become part of the difficult puzzle to solve.
No, absolutely. Now, of course, I mean, like you said, I've just put up a picture there of your book. I mean, really looking at reimagining innovation. And so, I mean, in the 21st century, I mean, obviously innovation looks very different from what it looked like in the 20th century or before, right? So, I mean, what would you say are the things that what do you recommend that people actually then are focusing on, when they're thinking about innovating within their organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think it, when you look at innovation, it's gone from incremental to exponential, and I think that's where I think OpenExO really has, the future, is part of this exponential future, and some of the different products that they've created around these exponential sprints and things like that are really important for big companies to start thinking about that, because the reality is we live in a VUCA world, a world that's very complex. It's something that big companies are kind of caught with their bureaucracy, that they've got to start to like innovate on the edge. And I think that innovation, as it goes exponential, means that decisions you make lean, iterative, agile, quicker decisions, but also needs to be conscious, and it needs to have purpose. And the book itself tries to capture some of your biggest exponential thinkers, like Elon Musk. We kind of probably I've overanalyzed Elon Musk at this point in my life, but his ability to define a purpose, start hiring the people and step out of the way is really part of the startup of the future, but it's also now part of the the grown-up companies, these global 100 companies that realize that they are being, anyone in a garage can actually create a better product than them, because of the easy how technology can be implemented, and the fact that everyone's so connected anymore that things happen very, very quickly.
No, I mean, absolutely. The one thing that I mean, I've heard from so many people who work in corporates, and if I think back to to my days working in a corporate, there's always the posters on the wall. This is our vision, our values, and I don't think I've ever come across anyone who says in a large corporate that says, yes, that's exactly what we live. Very few and far between, right? There are some. You look at what Paul Polman was able to do at Unilever, for example, actually living a purpose, living values, but generally it's more of a statement on a wall. So when you working with a large organization, how do you actually get across that? We always speak about also like immune system. Like what do you do to help them see that a part of the problem is themselves?
Yeah, so it's a good example. Is you got to give them companies that are not like them and then that are like them. So an example is if you take a European car company and you bring them to Seattle, for example, you're going to spend some time looking at companies like Amazon, but then you're also going to want to look at companies like REI. And the reason outside their industry is to say, okay, and then they realize is like all of these companies have very similar challenges of the external world kind of forcing them to change. But when you can take a company that's larger than them, a company like Amazon that now I think has surpassed 1 million employees, and you look that they still act lean, iterative, and agile. They have these 10,000 teams of, they call two pizza teams, which means we don't want a team that two pizzas won't feed. So in that, there's 10,000, groups of different people really competing to change the company and really innovate it from inside. Unlike a hierarchical or bureaucratic company, which most of the companies that have been around for 20 plus years subscribe to kind of this hierarchy, where decisions, you tell your boss what you think they want to hear, and the reality is they live in the ivory tower and are disconnected. So really connecting to the board of directors at some of these companies that I've had the privilege of being in and having these conversations is to take them into places and markets where they look at companies that are similar to them, that are doing things very, very differently. They generally immediately, just like anyone, reject the culture or the, that they're looking at. I've had the opportunity to go to Apple, Google, Facebook, and there's good and bad, and I really cover that in this book because I've had the opportunity to kind of see behind the scenes at all these companies of what they are doing exponentially, and that's really the subtitle of the book is The Future of Exponential Leadership, because if we don't start thinking about how we launch a product to impact 1 billion people, which as Larry Page is saying is I want to talk to people that want to impact 1 billion people. It's part of the exponential, part of singularity. If we're not thinking that way, then we're really going to be drowned out. The noise will drown us out, where we will not be competitive in whatever problem we're attempting to solve. So, ideally, these big companies have to figure out how they pivot into a new business model. They may be able to, provide the same product or service, but it's likely that they're going to provide it in a different way. And you got to look at a variety of different companies to kind of expose that. Then you can bring it back into a strategic plan that helps the board of directors or the senior leadership kind of say, here's what we need to do to kind of move forward into an exponential world. And what it really means is that they have to start disrupting themselves. So they have to start innovating, investing in accelerators, investing in incubation, all these different things, so that they can stay at the forefront of their industry, and so that they can also see what they need to acquire for the future, which is what Google and several of these companies have done to kind of stay at the forefront of their industries.
Absolutely. One thing that I come across quite often is when speaking to organizations about exponential transformation, like thinking exponentially, a lot of people say, yeah, but we're doing that. And what they're really talking about is the fact that they're digitizing a lot more, but not actually thinking about the transformation that's ahead and the potential that there is. And often digital transformations fail, right? Because of the fact that it's very hard to change human behavior. And that makes people scared of sort of that exponential transformation. Have you come across that as well? And have you found ways to counter that?
Yeah, well, I mean, Kevin, you make the good point is once something becomes digitized, it becomes exponential. So that is the first step. Now, whether the culture, whether the people, in the 6Ds model, Peter Diamandis and Kohler defined, you go through digitization, you go through this period of deception, disruption, democratization, dematerialization, demonetization, democratization. Those are hard 6 words to remember, but I've said them enough that I do remember them. But in that process, if companies start to identify where they are compared to other companies, their competitors, and then outside the industry, and they have an honest conversation of looking at, even a simple tool like a business model canvas or a lean canvas, and they define themselves and they define and then they define the external, you really do an analysis, which is part of the strategic work that I would do. And we'd even take people through a customer journey so they could say, well, what could be digitized? But I think your point's well taken. And I think part of helping these companies really make this transition, which they fail so often, is because the leadership's not on board. So if your leaders aren't really, a lot of them have mantras and different things, but the reality is it's hard to build a business that's going to disrupt or cannibalize your core business. I think what we've seen is you have to do that today. You have to actually start thinking about what is the next chapter and how we do that. You look at GE and IBM, and I'm actually starting to write a second book that's kind of built off of this book, because I have a new publisher out of New York that picked up.
You were saying before.
Yeah. So in that, the second book, what we're really looking at is like IBM and GE, where they in the past have been really good and actually did some incredible transformations, but right now are really having a hard time make that next jump. So, the reality of being successful in this once doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be successful, depending on the leadership and how much they're bought in.
Exactly, man. I was gonna say, it really comes back to leadership, right? You look at how many changes and pivots, some a company like Nokia made, and they're not completely gone, and there is still a business there, but it's interesting. It really does come down to the leadership, right? That to have that drive to make the change, and I guess the courage, right? Because when you're running a listed organization, I think it takes courage to make difficult decisions that maybe don't have an immediate benefit in this quarter, for example. And perhaps that's part of the reason why larger companies really struggle with this.
And that's something I cover. I mean, it's amazing how you kind of cover in my book. There is one of the chapters, playing the long game, and the reality is, like Alibaba is a company that has a 102-year plan. Now they're never, like any plan. The only thing that's accurate about a plan is that it's inaccurate, right? That it's not going to predict anything, but it's going to give you a purpose and a north. And so many companies think quarterly based on what they're doing, and their jobs are quarterly, unfortunately. And very few companies, but if you look at Apple, you look at Amazon, you even look at Google, they've redefined with their analyst to say, hey, we're not going to play by your rules, and we can't. And Elon Musk has done that and probably over succeeded. And he would even say, his stock is probably at a place that's unreasonable. But in that long-term thinking, Elon Musk laid his vision out in 2006 in a blog post, and literally it's happened. Not exactly how he said it was going to happen, but pretty darn close. I mean, his vision of creating the Model S, so that he could democratize, using the exponential language, the Model 3, and if I can deliver those, and then now you have this value of a company, and, you have Cybertruck, you have all these products coming and things. So he's looked at the long game, and really said, I'm creating an energy company. Their own mission wasn't necessarily to create the best automotive company. So where does that go beyond where we're at? And you could say, you mentioned values earlier, or Unilever and companies, and one of the keys, I think, to Amazon's success is Jeff Bezos and just creating these 14 leadership principles, which come back to exponential leadership, that they live, they hire, they recruit, they talk about it on a daily basis. It's one of those companies where that's helped them define to be frugal and to be more like a startup, even though they've grown up to be one of the world's largest companies. So there's a lot of wisdom in, these companies that have grown exponentially that the unicorns are kind of living into, which I talk a lot about these unicorns because they've figured out how to leverage these platforms and grow so quickly. But in the end, it's going to come back to purpose and leadership and culture and being conscious, because we're seeing a period of persecution that companies that don't do the right thing, if they're not on the right side of history, they're going to be eliminated because the communication channels are just so intertwined today that, doing the wrong thing, you no longer can do it. So it does come back to leadership.
Absolutely. And if we actually look back to Tesla, in terms of the broader MTP there, I mean, I've actually heard Elon Musk saying, if Tesla fails, but every other car company becomes electric, we've reached our purpose. Now that is such a mind, like a traditional CEO, like that sort of mindset is insane, right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, I mean, all of his sort of benefits or whatever of that it succeeds, and I really see it succeeding. But it's really that drive to purpose that allows them to build that community they have. You know, go and look how many Tesla themed YouTube channels there are. And it's insane, right? So they don't have to market in hardly anything because they've built this amazing community. So many exponential things. And speaking about that, of course, you know, we are you know, currently moving on to Exponential Organizations version 2, and I know you're participating in that as well. So yeah, what are you going to be focusing on as part of that V2?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity, you know, being part of OpenExO to be part of the next version of the book, and so it's been an enriching conversation to when the book originally came out, I think in 2012, to see 10 years later that you know, many of the ideas in there are still, you know, we went to have a kind of a deep conversation about what needs to be changed, and I know you were on those calls, but you know, you realize, and what it boils down is that the book has a really good formation. There's a couple additional things that we're adding.
Yeah.
I think to me, you know, I'm going to help focus on the business model side of it, which has really been my expertise as a professor and teacher, is to teach new business models. And I see that how companies adopt exponential business models is going to be important for their success in the future, because innovation itself, the novelty, doesn't necessarily matter. The delivery of that, even Tesla and all these other companies are going to be challenged by new ways to deliver their products. Tesla probably is going to be on the forefront of that as they make their vehicles autonomous and running around, and they become profit centers potentially, competing with Uber and things. But you know, that just changes the whole dynamic of ownership and assets, because now it becomes, instead of this thing that cost you, you know, it potentially becomes an asset. So Tesla could really reverse the model. I think other companies in the automotive space could do the same. And maybe, you know, it's going to be interesting. The first one to kind of be there isn't always the one that wins. Maybe in this case it is, but as we've seen in many other industries, someone paves the way for others. So
yeah, absolutely. That's 100% right. But I mean, it's going. I mean, the years we have ahead of ourselves are going to be extremely interesting. You know, as many things come into sort of abundance. You know, when we can have abundant energy, and I know, you know, many people might say, oh, that's years away, but again, exponentials are, we can't see the doublings. That really changes things dramatically when now power hungry processes can actually be affordable. That really changes the game. So it's I definitely think there's some exciting years ahead. Although some there is perhaps a chasm there. I don't know. What are your thoughts, you know, between that abundant future and where we are now? Yesterday we had a call about fiat and Bitcoin, and it got super heated, a discussion. You know, and a lot of people thinking that, I don't know if you've come across the book, The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth, but you know, he speaks about the fact that there's a lot of debt out there, and we just keep kicking the can down the road. But are you super positive about the future? What's your thoughts as we close out here?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I think when you look at the future, what I know is that we're starting to be able to solve problems in an exponential way. Which, if you just take the base of what, you know, Singularity, Salim, exponential organizations, Peter Diamandis, these different people that have really been on the forefront of kind of sharing these new models and examining that. What we see is to me, the future is very bright. You know, you look at Peter Diamandis' book, Abundance. All of our measures have moved in the right direction. With that, there's friction and chaos, and things will change. To your point, things will always happen twice. They're going to happen twice as fast, as they've have in the past, and they're going to continue every 10 years to kind of double on that. And that's where my new book is really about being light speed, is being as fast as light, because the furthest innovation is that you could jump to hyperdrive, or hyperspace, is like something that's unimaginable in a way. But we have to reimagine innovation. Between there and here, there's an abundance of new technologies and opportunities that'll create more equality, more access. You're looking at production of food, looking at transportation costs, energy costs, all these different things. The future is going to be very, very different than what it is today. But our ability, just for the fact that, probably everyone watching this has YouTube or Netflix, has more entertainment in their pocket than anyone had 10 years ago. And this, and it does not necessarily socioeconomically, there is no, people have access to these yes. channels. So it just depends on how you look at it. I'm an optimist, and I would just say that we will overcome, and we'll overcome quicker. I think there's, your purpose, and I'll even challenge Elon Musk, I guess, here is, if, inhabiting Mars sounds extreme, but the idea of it, there's so much to be learned between here and there, just like mining asteroids. But in that process, the reality is, Elon Musk just put up $100 million for an X Prize to basically, how do you take carbon out of the air? That's going to lead to, a reversal process of some of the harm we've done. We live on a finite planet, and that's kind of part of this book of Reimagining Innovation, is that we have to be conscious. We have to think about, people first, planet, over purpose, over profit. Profit actually, it's been proven with impact studies and all that these conscious capitalism companies, grow exponentially and can even be 14x the returns of a company that's not. So there's starting to be evidence that will start solving big problems. And I'll give you one example to leave on, since you had an example earlier about it. But Tony Chocolonely is a chocolate company out of Amsterdam. And a good friend of mine is one of their spokesperson, Enzo Van Zanten. And Tony Chocolonely basically has a purpose to eliminate slavery in the chocolate industry. Wow. And what they've spread light on is these cocoa or cacao, I don't know the exact word, places are largely in Ghana and different places that there's a lot of slavery and indentured servants. And that actually goes straight to production and very big companies that actually, a lot of your chocolate candies that you eat have some piece of that in slavery. So Tony Chocolonely's goal is to put them, to have every other chocolate company, all their competitors, adopt and find a way to eliminate slavery in that industry. And that's their sole purpose. They will cease to exist once that happens, once every other chocolate company's done that. And that is something that they're growing exponentially just because their purpose resonates with everyone. I now think about, when I pick up a chocolate bar, whether I'm eating chocolate, slave chocolate or non-chocolate. So I now have Tony Chocolonely in the, here for my kids and for myself. But it's that kind of idea that it doesn't always have to be technology, but having some vision for the future that's positive is going to get people behind your product and your item. And that's really what I help people in this book, and what I help in consulting is helping people kind of define that so that they can get really specific on what they want to see or what they want to be, 20, 30 years from now, which sounds crazy when you think about how much technology and how much change we're going to, bear between now and then. But it also gets real creative and gets real innovative. So it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, it's been great chatting to you. Obviously, I mean, if people want to connect, they can connect with you in the OpenExO community or on LinkedIn, I guess, or find your book, which is Reimagining Innovation. The picture is there on the screen. It's been there the whole time. So when you see that on your online bookstore, get it. It's been really great chatting to you. And of course, we'll see you around, see you in the V2 meetings and within the community. Thanks so much for being with us here today.
Thanks, Kevin, for having me. I appreciate it. All right. Have a good one.
Have a good day your side. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was Aaron. Great chatting to him. So much insights from many years of experience, different experience, and do check out his book. And I'm going to end the call today with a video about our upcoming consultant certification. If you're interested in understanding exponential more, understanding how you can help others to be more exponential, do check it out.
Do you want to play an active role in the largest business transformation in history? Hi, my name is Jaroslav and I'm the Chief Learning Officer at OpenExO, a global community of consultants, coaches, entrepreneurs and thought leaders helping organizations all around the world to benefit from the disruptive changes happening in their industries. I am responsible for the design and delivery of a suite of training and certification programs that train over 1,000 forward-looking business leaders and consultants every year. Our programs help you to understand and apply the hidden recipe behind some of the most innovative and most successful organizations that exist in the market today. I want to invite you to an introductory webinar about the EXO Consultant Certification Program. This program has been designed to teach the inner workings of exponential organizations and to give you an opportunity to apply the EXO model in real-life assignments. During the webinar, you will learn more about the content and structure of the certification, as well as hear from past participants about the value they received out of the program. The future of business will be led by exponential organizations. We can already see this by the number of unicorn companies disrupting almost every industry, as well as by the thousands of existing organizations applying the EXO model every day. Businesses all around the world are looking to you to assist them in navigating the largest transformation of business to date. Join our webinar to unlock exponential growth opportunities for yourself and for your clients. I look forward to seeing you there.